All right, welcome everyone. This is a workshop on how to use Zapier to automate your work. So if you're in the wrong place, this is your chance to run to the correct session. All right, cool. All right, my name is Fujan and I'm an IT specialist here at Clio. Identifying opportunities for automation is actually a big focus on my team. Automation offers us efficiency as a company. It clears a path for Clions to do what matters most, which is helping lawyers help people. By getting mundane, repetitive tasks out of the way, we ensure that there's enough time and energy put toward our product and providing support for you. So today I'm excited to share how you can use Zapier to automate your firm's workflow so that you too can reap the benefits of Zapier. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you set an alarm to wake up this morning? I weirdly, for once in my life, woke up before my alarm because I think I was nervous about this. But normally I set about 3 alarms. Now, why am I going on about alarms? Well, it's a great example of an automation tool we use every day that we don't think about. And luckily, people have been inventing ways to make automation more accessible for use by everyone so that we can set other tasks to be automated to this level. A kind of a set and forget it. Not quite, but close. So today we're going to be covering the basics of Zapier. We'll define automation using their vocabulary and get you in the developer mindset a bit. I'll also give you some examples of how other firms are using Zapier. And then in the second half of the workshop, we're going to get to some hands-on practice. Now, I'm a bit nervous, not for the talk, but mostly because I talk really fast to begin with. And then when I'm nervous, I talk even faster. So please interrupt me if you want something repeated or if you need me to slow down. I've been practicing pauses to make sure that I don't skate over things, but don't hesitate to get me to go back if you need. I will also say that this session is geared towards those of you who've recently gotten started with Zapier or are just getting started with Zapier now. Experienced Zapier users, you might find that you've already done a lot of the things we're going to cover, but I do encourage you to stick around as you may find that there are some best practices or options you missed along the way. And then if you do have specific questions regarding your current workflow in Zapier and you are a bit of a more advanced user, you can feel free to pair it with me or one on my team that's here. Just a quick introduction, you'll meet them through the workshop, but we have Scott Hamilton, Dan Fear, Aryan Khosravi, and Gavin Miller around the room. So we'll all be hands-on during the presentation with you. All right, let's kind of get into it. So the function of Zapier is actually in the definition of its name. Zapier comes from the founders wanting to include the acronym API in their name. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's basically a way to automatically have applications talk to each other. So it tells software A to do X when software B does Y. Welcome. Have a seat anywhere. Man, exhaling really loud is awkward on a microphone. Okay, and then the Zap part of Zapier just points to the act of connecting to different things like zapping data from one place to another. Now, Clio is very focused when it comes to features, but yet still there might be some edge cases specific to your firm that you just wish could be done automatically in conjunction with your data in Clio. This is where Zapier comes in. So the main thing you need to understand to be able to use Zapier effectively is a concept of triggers, filters, and actions. We'll dive into what those mean in a moment, but it's the basic structure of if X, then Y once again. So if this, then that structure of computer talk. Now, we're going to have to flex our minds a bit here and think about things in more binary ways to be able to give more specific directions to Zapier. For example, maybe you're a solo practitioner and you just wish that you could automate your marketing emails to focus on legal work. So you set up a Zap that pushes contact information from Clio to MailChimp and adds them to your marketing email list to receive automated emails. Bless you. Or maybe you have a hard time organizing your client emails in Gmail and you just wish that Gmail automatically had tags for each Clio matter, even newly created ones. So you can actually set up a Zap to create a tag in Gmail every time a new matter is created. Now, the Georgia Innocence Project is a great example of what can be achieved by using Zapier and Clio in conjunction. For those unfamiliar with the Georgia Innocence Project, they are a volunteer-run organization whose mission is to save wrongfully convicted people from doing time in jail. According to Matt Holbrook, their director of operations, they would have to hire at least one full-time employee to do all the tasks they've set up Zapier to do. And he goes further to say that if they wanted all those tasks done with the same level of consistency and quality, they would likely need 2 to 3 full-time employees. If you're here, chances are this is exactly what you're looking for. Chances are you're looking to optimize your time so that you can focus on lawyering. So I'm just going to ask everyone to take out a pen and use a paper in front of you, or use your computer or your phone, whatever you're most comfortable with, and just write down a few things, a few repetitive tasks at your firm that you just wish you didn't have to do anymore. We're going to keep them in front of us so that as we go through the presentation, we can start to think how we might be able to automate some of those. I'll give you a few minutes. Try to maybe come up with 3, not mandatory, but maybe we can do that to stick together on this. You can kind of keep running through the next couple slides. They're not super brain heavy, but I'm going to keep going. So Zapier allows people to automate and customize workflows using visual and ready-made blocks that, when combined, tell the software what to do. Something else to note is that different apps have different triggers and actions. For example, Clio has its own set of actions and triggers available to use in Zapier, whereas Slack and Google will have completely different ones. So the key to Zapier is actually combining the various triggers and actions of the platforms you use to meet your needs, which brings me to the payment plan here. So there is a free option that allows you to create single-step zaps only, but you start to really get the benefit of Zapier when you're able to use paths and filters in conjunction. We'll go over what those are, but they're basically multi-step zaps. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in this presentation, since this is really where you'll be able to tap into Zapier's true power. However, once you do know these, you'll also know single-step zaps. So if that's where you end up choosing to use, you'll be fine. Finally, we're going to define triggers, filters, and actions in the next few slides. This is where you might want to get me to slow down, just a heads up. Oh, and on that note, for questions, every time I've run this, I find that every time someone asks a question, I've answered it in the next few slides. But if you do have any questions, just write it down and then we can address it in the workshop section. We'll have 30 full minutes to go through the workshop, so you'll be okay. All right, so a trigger is a step that starts a Zapier workflow when new or updated information is added to an app. For example, every time I add a new matter to Clio, do X. Here's a list of supported triggers for Clio. You don't have to read the whole thing. All of the triggers and actions are available on Zapier's website. I just want to give you an idea of how many there are. And we're also going to dive into some examples, all the while remembering that the trigger is the action that initiates the automation. Here, the Clio trigger is a new matter, and it can result in a label being created in Gmail. In this example, the Clio trigger is a new task, and it'll prompt a reminder to be added to Slack using the information from that task. In this example, the trigger is new contact, and it can actually trigger 2 MailChimp actions at the same time. It can both add and update a subscriber, and it can add that subscriber to a tag. Okay, just some examples for you. Next, we have filters, my favorite. A filter is a step that only lets the Zap proceed if a certain test is passed. Think of it as setting a condition in place for your trigger. This is extremely important as it helps with focusing the Zap on specific subsets of data. Okay, for example, instead of every time I add a new matter in Clio, do X, it's now every time I add a new litigation matter in Clio, do X. In this example, new matter created is still the trigger, but right after that, you would want to add a filter for practice area, which equals litigation. Now, if this matter was just created, was anything other than litigation, the Zap would stop in its tracks and not proceed. But without a filter in place, this particular Zap would run for every new matter in Clio. That kind of makes sense so far? We're going to reiterate, so don't worry if it didn't totally land here. And last but not least, we have actions. So an action is the final step that finds, creates, and updates data. This is the work you'd be doing manually if you weren't automating it. For example, using our new litigation matter created example, if the lead litigation attorney wants to receive text messages every time a litigation matter is created, the action would be send an SMS message. Just like with the triggers, the supported set of actions will vary depending on the application. So here is a list of Clio's actions to take a look at. Once again, this is not something you have to read or note down. It's all available on Zapier's website. Okay, but before we move on to the next few slides, I want everyone to sort of get into that practice mindset. Pick up your pen, your laptop, your iPad, whatever you may have, and you're going to go through parsing out the next example with me, okay? Let's say I want to receive a text message every time a new family law case is created, or probably the attorney you're working for or with is asking you to set something like this up. So let's walk through the logic of this. It might be pretty simple, but I want to really get the logic down. So how do you think you would parse this? How do you think you would set up this example in Zapier? We're going to take it one step at a time. If you need them, the definitions of triggers, filters, and actions is on the right-hand side of the slide. We're going to start by figuring out what the trigger here is, remembering that the trigger is a general action that gets the automation rolling. So yeah, a new matter created is the trigger. And note that it's not new family matter created. Oh, by the way, I should point out that we have, for whatever reason, a bunch of Clio people wrote this slide and wrote case instead of matter on it, but we all understand probably that case and matter are the same thing. So it's not just the new family law matter created, but it's just new matter created so far. That being said, just give you a really big hint. What do you think the filter is? Yeah, nailed it. Okay, so family law case, or more specifically, practice area must exactly match family law is the filter. While triggers are always extremely broad, filters narrow that scope down to a specific subset of information by putting a condition on the trigger. So now that we know what the trigger and filter are, let's take a look at what the action might be. Any thoughts? Yeah, my gosh, you guys are very smart. Thank you. So yeah, send text message is the action. Now here's how you'll set it up in Zapier. It's going to get a little bit nitty gritty. First, we have to pick the app. Remember that every app has different sets of triggers and actions. So you have to pick the app to be able to see those lists. So we have our app here, and then we have to choose the trigger within the app. We agreed that the trigger here was new matter, right? So we'll select that. And then you'll have to choose your Clio account. It's not on the slide, but if this is your first time creating a Zap with Clio, you'll be asked to sign into Clio and authorize Zapier. It's quite simple once you have your Clio account, and once you've registered with your Zapier account, you're just one click away from integrating the two. Did I want to say that here? Yeah, just keep in mind that only the person with the Zapier account has access to the Zaps and to be able to edit them. So once you've selected your account, you'll then have to select a test matter for Zapier. When you're setting up your Zap, Zapier will test its validity by running them against a test matter. It can be any matter, but just keep in mind that if this matter doesn't meet the criteria of the Zap we're setting up, it'll fail as it should. We'll want it to do that, and we'll get into an example in just a couple slides on what that looks like. So once you've selected your trigger, account, and test matter, then you can set up the filter by choosing it from the panel on the right-hand side. And this filter allows you to put a check in place. So if our trigger is new matter, then what kind of new matter do we want to result in this action we're setting up? We said that we wanted to choose family practice area as our filter so that this action is only carried out on family matters. So in Zapier, the filter would be something like only continue if practice area name, selected from the dropdown, exactly matches, also selected from the dropdown, family. You'll want to make sure that the name of the field you're specifying exactly matches how it's listed in Clio. So if you have family law as your practice area in Clio, you'll want to write family law. If you just have family, you'll just want to write family in Zapier. So far, so good? Cool. Now, if the test matter is indeed a matter with family as a practice area, the test will succeed. But if the test matter happens to be something else, the test will fail since it's not the trigger you selected. Again, this is a good thing. It means your Zap is working as it should. If, however, your test matter practice area is family, it passes the test and the Zap continues through to action. In this case, the action is to send an SMS to the lead family attorney. So this is what it looks like if your test matter doesn't match the criteria of your filter. It looks like an error, but it's not. And I'm reiterating this a million times because I was so confused when I first learned this. So you'll notice that it shows why the Zap wouldn't have continued. It's because the practice area is actually conveyance and not family. So again, this is working exactly how we want it to. Last but not least, we have to set up the action. In this case, like we talked about, the action is to send an SMS. This is one of Zapier's built-in features. Now, we don't have a whole lot of time to dive into all of the features that Zapier has, but I'm hoping that this will just give you a peek into what's possible with Zapier outside of the integration. Heads up that this particular feature is only available in the US and the UK. Okay, and to set it up, you'll simply put in the number you want to send this message to and confirm using a PIN. This feature does only allow you to send an SMS to one person, but if you wish to send the text message to multiple people, I'd recommend an app like Twilio, which also, if I'm correct, integrates with Zapier and or something like Slack. That being said, this is fine for our example since we do just want to send it to one person. Okay, now once you've confirmed the phone number, you can set up the message part. Start by simply writing down what you wish the message to say. Here we have a new family matter created, client name, and matter description. Just some dummy text, you just want to type it out. And then to populate the data, you can actually highlight a piece of text. This will open a drop-down menu with all the metadata from the previous steps. In this case, we can pull the client name from the client name field that comes with a new matter trigger, and the same thing for matter description. When added properly, they will show where they're being pulled from by the number indicated in front, as well as they'll have an example from the test matter in gray. Okay, everyone's head steaming at this point? Mine kind of is. Okay, so here they are. Don't be scared of variables. We didn't really talk about it, but it's essentially we didn't name it, but it's the drop down when you have the text and then you can find the metadata. That's called a variable. So you can have dynamic text essentially in this scenario. All right. I hope that recap helped. So we're going to take it one step further. Let's just say that you get thrown a curveball, and going back to our original example, the attorney wants the client phone number in the text message as well so that he can call them back right away. But when you go to try and set up the Zap to include the client phone number, you realize that the client phone number isn't a matter field, so it's not going to be in the new matter trigger data. But you do know that you have the phone number under the contact in Clio. So what you can actually do is that you can have more than one action per Zap. Actions not only allow you to create and update data, but find more data based on what you already have in the app that you're using. This is called a search action. It's a specific type of action that allows you to query an application, and if there's a match, it will retrieve all the relevant data points. And for Clio specifically, we have a find person contact action, which we can use to grab the phone number by using the data provided in the previous new matter trigger step. So in order to do this, we actually have to go back one step before the send SMS action and add in the search step. So since the client ID is provided with the new matter trigger, we can use that ID number to look up any matching metadata within the Clio contact. You can search for this data in various ways. Here we're searching for the contact metadata by contact ID number. You can also search it by contact name. Once this is set up, we now have a whole new set of contact variables we can pull from, including phone number here now. So when we go to set up the SMS again, once we proceed to the action, you'll be able to add the client phone number. So going back to our alarm clock analogy, if you wanted to set that up as a zap, how do you think you would break it down into a trigger, filter, and an action? Again, the definitions this time are on top of the slides if you need them. And we're going to start kind of backwards. So instead of going trigger, filter, action, we're going to go action, filter, trigger. Let's start first with what you think the action would be if you were setting up an alarm clock automation. Assuming you wanted to wake up at 7 a.m., just for the sake of consistency, that's the time we're all waking up today. Which would have made everyone late for the conference, I think. Yeah, sorry, should have shouted. Yeah, exactly. The alarm going off. Nailed it. Clock makes loud noise. Y'all are smarter than I thought, so sorry. I think that's a compliment. Or maybe not. I really have a way of meaning to give compliments and then accidentally insulting people, so I'm really sorry. So yeah, the action here is the alarm going off, kind of like exactly like you would receive a text about a new family matter created. So next, let's figure out what the filter is. If you're waking up at 7 a.m., assuming you're waking up at 7 a.m., what is the filter? 7 a.m., exactly. 7 a.m., just like we don't want to get a text message for any new matter in Clio, we just want to get it when there's a new family matter is created. So yeah, time matches exactly 7 a.m. All right, with that in mind, what do we think the trigger is? So remember that if we didn't have the filter for 7 a.m., the alarm would be going off around the clock. If the action is loud noise, aka the alarm, and the filter limits that loud noise to 7 a.m., what do you gather the trigger is? So time is updated. So if you remove the filter of 7 a.m., you would have the alarm go off at all hours. This is because automation never sleeps. Thank you. That was not a joke that landed, Ari. It's fine. All my other improvised jokes landed, so we're fine. I'm going to have to tell Alexa about that. Yeah, so time is updated. Every hour works. This is, again, not the perfect analogy, but I was thinking like anytime time is updated, the trigger is scanning the perimeter to see if it's 7 a.m. And if it's not, the automation stops. But if it is 7 a.m., it'll move on to action. I just said this slide. So I'm going to move on. Okay, now that we understand the concept of triggers, filters, and actions, let's just talk about the next potential step. So let's say we wanted to build a zap with the same trigger, but different actions for different filters. Well, one way would be to just set up multiple filters, but Zapier actually allows you to build this out in one zap using paths instead of filters. It's just like a different function, the name of a different function that they have in their application. This will help you. This will help prevent you from repeating yourself, and it promotes even more efficiency in your workflow. So let's say now every lead attorney saw what you did for the lead family attorney, and now they all also want a text message when a new matter is created in their practice area. This seems really complicated, but we can easily break it down into branching paths with differing actions like so. And again, while you could set this up with multiple separate zaps, not only does this count towards your account's limited zap total if you're not in the highest tier, but because that one's unlimited, but this can also get very out of hand really quickly with all the different zaps with similar names. So I do recommend the paths here. So to add a path in Zapier, you can click it from the side menu after you've set up your trigger. Each path will allow you to set up a unique rule that leads to its own action, creating a single zap which can branch out into multiple directions. Okay, so once you've selected the path, you'll set up filters for each path the same way as you would with a regular filter. So the only thing that's different between paths and filters essentially is that you're picking one trigger, and then you're picking multiple filters and actions coming out of that same trigger. And once you've completed setting up your zaps, don't forget to give them a name. That way, unlike me, you can tell what they are at a glance. You can also organize your zaps into folders. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation portion. I hope this sheds some light on truly how powerful Zapier can be to cut down on admin work and allow you to truly focus on what's meaningful in your practice. Zapier's strength is really in handling edge cases, so there wasn't a way we could fit all of the examples in this scenario because it just differs so greatly from firm to firm. However, by truly understanding the core concept and logic required to set up Zaps, you'll be able to take this knowledge back home and be that resident Zapier expert for your firm. And you can even use it to actually automate other apps or build your own integrations. Zapier does require some upfront work to set up, as well as time for regular maintenance, just to make sure that the Zaps are functional and that you're still getting the most out of them. But the benefit of a well set up Zap or two can be exponential when you consider the time you've now freed up.